Everyone. Welcome to the first session of Experts Talk on Entrepreneurship Opportunities in Healthcare, organized by Nirman, the pre-incubator at IIT Madras. I'd like to extend a special welcome to our esteemed speakers who have made a mark in healthcare and wellness and are here to share their valuable experience and insights. Nirman at IIT Madras is committed to encouraging entrepreneurship and supporting the entrepreneurial dreams of its students. Nirman provides a sandbox space where students' teams work on and give shape to their business ideas. It provides mentorship, training, funding, and network opportunities to student startups as they embark on their entrepreneurial journeys. Nirman provides all guidance and support to ensure budding entrepreneurs move steadily towards setting up their successful enterprises. Nirman is truly a startup of startups. Continuing its tradition of acquainting students with startup opportunities in an ever-changing and evolving environment, Nirman brings you three experts, Mr. Shiva Subramaniam, Dr. N. Ramakrishnan, and Dr. Sudarsun, each a legend in the space, to talk about the opportunities that exist in healthcare sector for young and aspiring entrepreneurs on campus. Please join me in welcoming our experts. Sir. Without further delay, I would now like to introduce our first speaker for the day, Dr. Sudarsun Santhiappan, a gold medalist from the University of Madras and an alumnus of IIT Madras. Dr. Sudarsun has extensive experience in artificial intelligence and research on statistical natural language processing and text mining. Dr. Santhiappan has been the Director of Research and Development with Burning Glass Technologies for over a decade. He's currently the co-founder of BUDDI AI, which develops cutting-edge machine learning solutions for revenue cycle management in the healthcare sector. He's also the founder of Applied Research Council, established in 2004, and Setu Bhaskara Alumni Association, founded in 2008. He's equally passionate about supporting students and indulges in mentoring and teaching via forums, seminars, and conferences. We genuinely believe that our youth has much to learn from him, and we hope we all can excel together under his tutelage. I request Sir to come on the dais and share his thoughts.
Good morning. Am I audible? So I'm very glad to be here and very happy to see all these bright faces who have big hopes in life and the future of India. Let me put it that way. I hope you guys stay in India and solve problems in India. Right. Great. So healthcare, right? So today the focus is more on healthcare. I mean, how do we go about solving problems and convert the ability to solve problems into a company and maybe into revenue and maybe into something disruptive, right? That is what we aim at, right? And okay. Where is the machine? It's there. Okay. All right. See, I'm given only 20 minutes. I don't know if I can finish within 20 minutes. Is that okay if I overshoot? Not okay. Still not there, man. I think maybe the distance. Okay, I'll call out. I'll call out for changing the slide. No issues. See, the thing is, we are very curious about healthcare for several reasons. The first reason being the vested interest, because healthcare is the oldest problem domain. Why do you think it is oldest? Because it started since human life started. Every other vertical, every other business domain or problem domain came after the fact, right? So healthcare coexisted with humans. So it's the most ancient problem domain, and there are still a lot of problems which are yet to be solved. It's a abundant opportunity, right? And it is close to my heart because I may have been affected, my loved ones may have been affected, or my neighbors may have been affected with different healthcare use cases. And I have felt many times in my life, okay, what am I going to do to solve these problems, right? I'm sure I have felt that many times. I mean, I'm not a doctor. There is one great doctor here. He can solve a lot of problems. But when I think that my life is going out of my control, I feel helpless. And I would always keep myself up to the race where, if I get an opportunity to solve a problem in healthcare, bloody, I will do it. I'm sure all of us are motivated in that sense, correct? Yes or no? Yeah, great. Let's go there. So if you pragmatically look at the opportunities in healthcare, it is attractive because there's a lot of money in that space. Also, like more than the vested interest to solve the problem for my own self-satisfaction and to gratify my urge for solving problems, I can also look at the tangibles that can be out of solving problems for the healthcare vertical. It's a $1 trillion market, right? If you aggregate all the healthcare problems, it's easily a $1 trillion market. And there are several $1 billion market problems. There are several $1 million market problems. So it's all waiting for folks like you to come down and solve. So pragmatically, it makes a lot of sense to explore that area because wherever you touch, you see an opportunity there. Whatever you touch, there is an opportunity there. It's unlike other fields where you have to go hunt for a suitable problem that might interest you. In healthcare, wherever you touch, there is an opportunity. Okay. And the most interesting story about this is, especially when you look at the use case called AI for healthcare, this is still in the very nascent stage. There are a lot of problems which are yet to be solved using the available AI technology today, because AI for healthcare is kind of a very recent phenomenon. Very recent phenomenon. I'll tell you why it is a recent phenomenon. When we founded this company in 2013, there were not many players who said AI for healthcare is a possibility. People laughed at us when we said, okay, we will solve the problem for you using the available AI technologies or the technologies that we might build for the given problems. People laughed at us, literally. They did not believe that AI can solve such problems. Why? Because historically, healthcare problems have been always solved by human labor and human judgment. And when a problem is always solved using human judgment, the people who are doing the judgment will not want to change their bias. It's anyone will resist that, right? Because I am an expert in my field, and suddenly you come and tell me, no, I can do better than. If you come and tell me that you can do better than me, I am challenged. So I will push you back. This is exactly what happened 10 years back. Even today, it is happening. A lot of practices will resist the change. And the second side effect of it is, people also see AI as a threat. I mean, they think that, AI might replace humans. That's not the story. That is not the truth at all. AI will always be a supplementing technology. Because see, end of the day, healthcare is more about the humane treatment that you give to a patient, or the humane treatment that I get when I am a patient. That machines can never do. See, the love and care a nurse gives you, a machine can never do that. So humans cannot be replaced by machines when it comes to healthcare or the point of care. But there are other areas where humans can be easily, let's say, throttled down by the application of machinery or automation or AI-powered automation. Because there are a lot of problems which are solved manually, just taking longer time to deliver the solution. For example, let's say if I get admitted in a hospital, and if my consulting surgeon or consulting physician says that I am fit to get released, usually it happens in the morning, right? During the morning visit, the physician will tell you, okay, you are good, sir, you can go home. We will all be cheered up. But when will you actually get released from the hospital? The next day evening. Why? Have you ever thought about it? I have thought personally that the hospital is keeping me additionally for 1 day so that they can take more money from me. Not true, my friends. Not true at all. It's because the hospital is scrambling for information from different departments and they are trying to consolidate all the information into one document called discharge summary. The discharge summary is an aggregate of several documentation created over your period of stay. And it is a hard problem because there are multiple stakeholders involved and there is flow control issues everywhere. Information will come at different times and someone has to read through all the information, summarize it into one coherent piece of text and give you as the discharge summary. Most of the times you will not get the discharge summary on your exit day. They will say you come after 1 week, sir. Why? Because people are doing it manually. Can this problem be solved using machines? Sure, it should be. But even today, it is not. Because it is an insanely hard problem. Because if you want to create a discharge summary, you have to be a doctor. Only then you can understand everything which is presented to you as a document. And you can understand, interpret, correlate, corroborate, and do all the stuff to get one coherent piece of text that will make sense to the next doctor who is going to continue your medication. Right? If the discharge summary is broken, your next doctor is going to say, no, we will clean the board, we'll start from scratch. You have faced this situation multiple times in life because the previous discharge summary is incomplete. Or the previous documentation is incomplete. Or the doctor is not willing to trust the previous treatment. Any of these reasons can happen. So discharge summary is very critical for continuing the medical care. And right now, we do not so good work in doing that. This is one opportunity where machines can come into play or AI can come into play. Specifically speaking, medical language understanding can come into play. That is what my company is doing. By the way, my company is supposed to be pronounced as BUDDI AI, not the other utterance. BUDDI is a wordplay between BUDDI and BUDDI as a friend, right? Wisdom, friend, BUDDI AI, connected. Yeah. So I'll just skip over. So these are the different points. If you're a entrepreneur in the making, these are some of the points I would want you to keep at the back of your mind. So the space is deep and wide because the space has been there for so many thousand years now in its own flavors, right? So what you have to do is first, if you have just the interest, not enough, my friends. If you have the interest or if you have the technology prowess, it is not enough to start a company in healthcare. No, you have to first understand who's your target audience. What is the market you're trying to address? What are the problems that you're trying to address? As I said, wherever you touch, you have an opportunity, right? So which means there is humongous availability of problems. Too many problems are available for you to take it up. So be wise in choosing what are the problems that you want to take up, because that is going to decide your life, your career, your growth, your revenue. Everything is going to be decided on that. So do your homework first. Understand what is available, understand the landscape, understand who are the competitors, who are the players, what are the different problems people have solved, what are the different problems people have not solved, what are the problems no one is willing to solve. Understand that landscape and then take an informed decision about these are the interesting problems I'm going to pursue. Let's say if you take 4 or 5 problems as your interesting problems, you may land up in 1 or 2 finally, but have a funnel which will allow you to filter it ultimately to one good problem on which you can bid your life on, right? You can bet your life on that. So the next thing is, after you have chosen your problem, you have to understand what is going to be my solution space. What are the possible technologies that I need to learn if I don't know already to solve these problems? This is something we'll have to decide as an entrepreneur or as a CEO or a CTO. When you wear that hat, you have to make that conscious decision ahead of time, right? Let's say after you understood your technology or whatever technique that you want to use to solve the problem, then you have to identify your team, because one-man army in healthcare is impossible. I'll tell you why. Because if you have to be a one-man army, you have to be a doctor, you have to be an engineer, you have to be a doctorate to solve it. This combination is weird and it is very rare. There are people like that. There are very few who are like that, but it is very, very rare. And if I am having this entrepreneur mindset, and if I am only a domain expert, I may not be able to pull it off. If I am only the technology expert, I may not be able to pull it off. So my friends, please be ready for collaboration. So, right, you have to identify a partner who can add value to the overall holistic system, and partnership is the only way you can take this forward. Because if you think I will learn everything myself, all young bloods will think that way because of your adrenaline rush, right? I will learn everything. I have another 40 years of active time. It won't work practically. I was also thinking that way, and I understood my mistake. Okay, 20 years back, I was also like that, but I understood my mistake. So I would say, if you have this dilemma between build and partner, please consider partnerships, because that will take you forward faster, right? Of course, there are challenges in identifying a partner. You have to go through that. You have to always go through that. And finally, once you have the technology stack, you have the solution to the problem, you have identified your audience, have a clean go-to-market strategy, right? The go-to-market strategy has multiple things. The biggest, the most difficult requirement that one would expect from an entrepreneur is not your technology prowess. It is your ability to convince people. There are two types of people you have to convince invariably. The first one is your prospective customer, because you are going to make that fellow believe in whatever you have created, and you are going to persuade that fellow to pay you money, right? So your persuasion skills, your ability to pursue somebody, right, with a lot of patience and virtue, that ability is definitely needed, because otherwise you don't have revenue. The second group of, or second stakeholder whom you have to convince is your investor. Someone who's going to count on your ideas, someone who's going to count on your passion to put money in your company. So these two stakeholders you have to convince. If you cannot convince them, please join a company, don't start a company. Okay. So to be an entrepreneur, you have to be a great salesman. You have to be. There is no excuse there. You have to be a salesman. Otherwise, you cannot take this forward. Okay. So I will just finish it up. I think my 20 minutes is gone already. Gone? Gone, huh? Sorry. Yeah, sometimes it happens, you know. When you put your passion into it, suddenly everything evaporates. Anyways, to summarize it, what I want to say is, have your market thoroughly understood, right? Spend your time, do your literature survey. See, when you want to publish a paper, you do literature survey. You spend at least 30% of your time on it, right? It is worth, because if you spend that 30% time, you don't have to sweat later, right? Do your homework, understand the market, because the market is deep and at the same time it is very wide. So do the market survey. Understand your competition. If you have picked some problems from that market, understand your competition. What is already built out, right? It doesn't mean that you should stop when you see a competition. No, understand what are the problems they solve, and what is the quality of their solution, and what are the gaps that they are yet to solve. That opens up an opportunity for you, because when you go head on with your competition to a prospective customer, you can beat them on their limitations, on the gaps, right? So do your homework, number one. Second, understand the technology which you want to use to solve your problems. Understand the technology, understand the landscape of the technology. It doesn't mean you have to be an expert on day zero, not necessary at all. You can always learn it. You can always learn it. The third thing is, don't try to learn everything. Don't try to learn everything. Partner with people who are already an expert in the complementing space. Okay. So try to find partners with whom you can complement and reach the goal together. Third. Fourth is, how do you build your team? So if you have your own team, how are you going to build the team? That is something you'll have to understand. Fifth is your go-to-market strategy, right? How are you going to take the products that you have already built? How are you going to take it to revenue generating production? And finally, a holistic expectation is, you work on your ability to convince people. Either it could be a prospective customer or it could be a prospective investor. So if you don't have the ability to convince others, please start developing the skills and then start your entrepreneurship journey. Okay. Thank you very much for the opportunity. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, sir. It was a privilege to learn about BUDDI work in health space. With a $1 trillion market space in front of you guys, the opportunities are unlimited. I'm sure the 5-pointer roadmap given by Dr. Sudarsun added perspective to the audience over here. Now, moving on to our next speaker for the day is Mr. Subramaniam, a master's degree holder in international management and finance from United World College, Southeast Asia, and Nottingham University, UK. Currently, he is the chairman of Connect Ventures Group. He became one of India's foremost impact and sustainability entrepreneurs with more than 20 startups under his wing. Mr. Shiva Subramaniam aims to achieve utopia by minimizing the rift between health and environment in an organized and well-structured corporate ecosystem. His success could be attributed to his impeccable business acumen, tenacious attitude, and far-sighted vision for the healthcare industry in India. Mr. Subramaniam is also a prolific sportsperson with over 27 years of training in different forms of martial arts and heads Bujinkan India chapter. Thank you once again, sir, for joining us today. With that being said, I request you to come and share your thoughts.
Hi, thank you all for having me here. Dr. Sudarsun, that was amazing because I think he took half the stuff I have to say and already did it. So I'll have only 10 minutes. So, the funny part of this is, if I may, all successful people seem to have a similar path, right? And you have the opportunity today to sort of look at that and say, we all have such different fields, but he's speaking the same language as I would, and you'll hear it in a second. So pay attention to the resonance of that, because I was sitting and smiling because, the experiences that he talked about are so similar to stuff that we all go through, right? And, this is the problem of hindsight. I know we're going to tell you this, you're not going to listen, and you're going to go make the same mistakes, and you'll end up being here the same way we are today. But this is part of life. With that, let me start off with the first slide, and I'll take you through it. Not connect. Let's go. Yeah, okay. So you know what? For me, this is the most interesting part of it. I decided a long time ago that we are not trying to build an organization. I didn't want to build an organization. My theory was very simple. We are an organism, and we are suspended in this environmental soup. Our health is then a consequence of what's happening all around us, right? It's not just about what I do or how my genes are. It's the interaction of my genes with my environment. So of course the air is important. The soil is important. How and what I put in my food is important, right? Everything is important. An organism by its very frame is affected by everything. And I think this is something we're not cognizant of, right? We have this Descartesian idea that I alone exist and, I have no relation to anything that's happening around me. So if I'm sick, it's because I have a cold and the virus attacked me. But what about all the other things around us that would change? So that's why I'm talking about it from the perspective of, can you think for a second of being an organism that's adaptable, that's flexible? And that's how we are. So there's this idea called biomimicry. And biomimicry is basically to mimic what nature does, right? I mean, I know you do it in engineering, it's in every field. But how come we don't have the biomimicry of an organization? And you know what it is? It's exactly as Dr. Sudarsun said. The biomimicry of an organization is collaboration, is partnerships, right? I mean, that actually is the way to go. It's the law of thermodynamics, if I may. Don't create anything in terms of energy that somebody's already done before, right? And this is the greatest shame because we feel that we need to do everything, but not particularly, right? I mean, it's about this cohabiting. And somehow I think the modern day world has forgotten about that, right? And so let's move to the next slide and I'll explain why. So yeah, I'm supposed to be running some 20 odd startups. Don't take that too seriously. It's not 20 odd startups. We just created an ecosystem. An ecosystem is a place, right? Where you got to understand, there's no such thing as health in isolation. Health is a combination of food and sustainability and everything else put together. So around 18 years ago, I decided instead of building one big company, let me build a sustainable forum of an organism, right? Where you can have all of these things coexisting. Imagine a community of innovation. The problem with it is, how will I be able to work with Dr. Sudarsun for 20 years? Imagine what we will be able to do together. If I work with Dr. Ramki for 20 years, how many innovations can we come up with? We stopped investing in the human being. We're trying to make products. It's so silly. You get like one product. If I invest together and we invest together in a concept, what are we able to do then? It's not one thing, right? Imagine having a generator, a community generator of innovation and ideas, right? And not one thing. I think it's a great shame that we focus in on one thing, and the greatest part of this whole thing It's actually the human beings that are sitting over here. I mean, you guys have already passed some ridiculous amount of competition to actually be here, right? I mean, to be here itself is insane. And I'm thinking like, okay, that's the first step. But the next step is, what happens after this? How come we're not able to sustain this cohabitation, to co-innovate? That means, imagine not one product, 8,000 products, right? So that's how we did that. We have a multidisciplinary firm, but basically I go to my office and, I have my wife sitting there. She's got a different company, but, she's in sustainability. And then I got my best friend in food. So basically, when I go to my office, I go to the community that I live in. I love going to the office because for me, it's not the office. It's a place that I designed to live my life. I spend more time there than anywhere else. Our kids run around there. I want them to grow up in this soup, the environment, right? It's much like you guys, because you're so interdisciplinary, especially in a place like IIT, you guys are able to come up with crazy stuff. But the point is, the minute you leave, you're in isolation again, right? And there's something called in neurology, single cell insufficiency. One cell can't do shit, basically. I mean, so the point over here is like, if you're not able to create a neural mind map of possibility, right, where you're all not able to fire together, we've done nothing. And this is maybe our problem, because we have the brains, but maybe the only thing we're missing is this community of innovation, right? So when you look at it, it's all the same story. It's not different things. So what we did is, I want you to start thinking of healthcare differently. You have to be sound from soil, water, waste, energy, food, and only then can you land up at health. So all of that is healthcare. There's nothing separate about it. As I was telling the doctor, we're a hologenome. We have 10 trillion bacterial cells, only 1 trillion human cells. So why are we designing for the human being? It's just an interesting question, right? We have to design for the hologenome. We have to design for the entirety of this organism. And that's why, I mean, we eat our curd rice over here is a classic example of fermented food that's been helping us move ahead for the past 100 years, right? I'm just giving an example, but how come we don't think of that as nutraceutical? That is a nutraceutical that's aligned to us, right? I'm just opening up your mind to possibility. It's not like I got 20 minutes. I mean, what am I going to tell you about what you don't already know? But what I can say is like, look, this is my journey. That's all I can actually talk to you about, right? Yeah, so that's what we are actually doing. So we did health, water. We started with actually the agricultural bit, and we ended up at performance. So today the Olympians come to us. But there are two things that we do different. We use Indian data, and we use our Indian anthropology to change it. So that our homegrown foods, our fermented foods, our nutraceuticals, we don't have to look for some sirtuin from coming across from the other side of the planet. We already have everything here. We've just been doing it for the past 1,000 years. We don't have a fancy name to call it, but it's still the same stuff, right? And it's all about the integration of data, as Dr. Sudarsun was talking about. And that's why I was just saying, that's it. It's just one thing. Now imagine all of that integrated. You get a 90% percentile on a problem that anybody walks up to you, and it doesn't matter whether you're going from waste or whether you're coming in from health, right? And that's the whole of it. I don't want to take you through the individual parts of the whole, because that's not the purpose that we're here for. Maybe I can take you through some examples of what we do. Next slide, please. Great. So this is look, it looks really fancy, but look, actually, I'm not a doctor. I have a lot of training in performance and sports nutrition, epigenetics, and applied neurology for performance, but I'm not a doctor, right? This is actually what every single person in the world should use. It's data-centric. Now, here's my point, right? For me, everything is about human behavior. So when you look at human behavior, how's the best way I can change behavior? So I got this glucose monitor on. I worked with this company called Ultrahuman, and it's on my phone. So I have, my glucose stream for 14 days in a row. Now, I don't need to know what food works for me or not. My data is telling me what I should and what's happening with my body. It's not whether it's good or bad. I'm not diabetic. I'm just using it as a performance tool from data. Your metabolites are interesting. It's like playing Sherlock Holmes with every cell in your body. You take one drop of pee, has a signature of every single thing that you've ever done that day and the last week. So you just got to break down the metabolites, and most of you know what that is, and go backwards into the research papers, and you find like things that you wouldn't believe, right? Now, that's data. So it's saying, dude, you're stressed. Now I say, no, mentally, I'm really calm. I'm meditating every day. Everything is good. But your body is taking a bullet for it. 10 years down the line, you have cancer. And you're like, my mind was still calm. I'm like, yeah, but your body was taking the bullet for it. And nobody is watching that, right? I don't sleep. You should go to a doctor. But it begins to count, The greatest cure for cancer is sleep. But nobody will look at that. I mean, I'm wondering how many of you guys at IIT are actually even thinking of sleep as an option. But this is exactly what I'm trying to point out, right? And those ramifications are there. So this again becomes all data, right? Your cognitive function is completely dependent on that. So here's a good question for you. Are you more efficient if you study all night or less? Again, I'm just asking a question, right? It's really intriguing because you have the exam. It's really because we don't have data to actually show us that, but actually we do. We just don't use it. There's something called heart rate variability. For those of you who want to look into it, go look into it. It actually tells you about your preparedness every day. Everything is out there. And I think doctor said, if you just put your hand out and touch it, it's there. There's $1 million just waiting for you. Not so easily. You need to make a lot of friends to get there. But I mean, that's the other thing he said as well. So this is sort of that, right? I'm not going to take you through everything. I'm just trying to point out like complex things simplified. The stupider it is and the simpler it is and the more accessible it is, you will change. When somebody comes for any of these things, the only thing they're actually asking for is to change themselves. If you have a pain anywhere, what you are saying? I don't want to be in pain, so I have to change something to not be in pain. I'm obese. I have to change something to not be obese. You're saying I want a different version of myself. So if I can give you data points to make a different version of yourself, you're a different version of yourself, right? It's simple. And there you go. Healthcare in a nutshell. Okay, next one. Great. Now I just want to tell you, now this is where I need to talk to Buddy over there. But this is exactly what we're talking about. Look, today, I can see thousands of collaborations with both of them because we're doing things on neurotransmitters and cortisol. And there I have somebody sitting next to me who's the foremost expert on sleep. On the other side, this very slide is exactly what he talked about, which I'm talking about. But he was talking about the clinical realm, and I'm just saying the same thing is applicable to every single person. We can democratize pretty much anything if you choose, right? I think that's what Web3 is all about, but let's not get there. That's not my area of specialty. This is. So my greatest ability is to connect people and connect ideas and thoughts and create. That's it. And you have to do this because here's the greatest problem with this. You know why you need an ecosystem like this? Because great ideas come from the ones that nobody will invest in. There are things that you have to do that nobody will invest in. So it may be the microbiome, but you need to do it because that knowledge is going to be the one that's going to make you the next best thing that's ever going to happen, right? And that's when nobody ever does it. And that's why singular ideas, singular beliefs, unfortunately, are not going to cut it, right? Again, I'm not talking you through the whole slide. I'm just saying how it works. And I'm connecting the AI to the things that we discussed, right? Broad spectrum. Anyway, you have questions. So if you want to ask anything in specific, we can. Okay, let's go. All right, so this is how it all puts together. So how do you achieve your maximum potential? This is another interesting thing. The same organism, now let's take it back to organization. You know what the worst thing in the world for me is? Money in the bank. You want to know why money in the bank is the worst possible thing? I have $1 billion. That is $1 billion of wasted potential sitting in a bank. That is the greatest sin in the world. Because that means none of that went to innovation, none of that went into creation, that just sat in a bank. This is the same potential with us. You're accessing less than 10% of your ability currently, right? Come on. Physically, mentally, cognitively, less than 10%. If we're able to look at the data and you're able to change these small things, imagine what you could be. Literally, you could be superhuman because we have the ability to do so. But unfortunately, there's nothing that's allowing us to evolve. We're stuck in a loop, because this is a loop. Let's see, right now, I think it's placements for you. And that'll be half of you. And the other ones will be doing the entrepreneurship. That will be your stress right now. And then, what's next, right? I mean, that's the way it goes, right? But you guys are in the entrepreneurship room. So, this is the non-place people here. Okay. No, I'm just, again, this is it, right? It's the loop. Now, how can we break this loop of thinking? Well, you can get crazy people like me to come because I'm not from IIT. But I need IIT. You see my point? You are the greatest minds in the country, but we're not able to communicate unless somebody like Dr. Itar dragged me here and then I'm able to communicate what I know, right? And I met 2 other amazing gentlemen who are somehow related to everything I do, but obviously everybody will be related to everything we do. The only point is how can I make us work together? That's it. The question you ask is, what is the project? No. I'm only interested in the human beings. I'm not worried about the project. The projects will come, as many as you like. If we can, so to speak, vibe, trust me, there's crazy stuff happening here, right? And the same with all you guys in the room, right? That's what's really important, because that's going to last me the next 20 years. We may fail, but remember, there's no such thing as failing. I only have one question when you ask about failure, right? Who decides when you fail? You can answer that for me when you ask me questions. Can we go to the next one? All right, man. Now we're getting in more to the an example of work, right? So we figured out that nobody is going to stop eating tair sadam, or nobody is going to stop eating aloo parathas, and they will all continue to be unhealthy. So what we did is we came up with an algorithm that actually picks up like what people eat, and then does a breaks it down into all the micronutrients, macronutrients, everything else there. And then we custom built a bar for you. It's got a lot of protein, a lot of fiber. It's all plant-based protein stuff, right? And you give it to them before he eats. Say eat whatever you want after that. Just eat this before that. You know, the great news of fiber is that you can't eat much after that. So you will still have the psychology of food, which is the satiation. You will enjoy the food a little bit, but not because you can't, because your stomach can only accommodate that much, right? So now that becomes an interesting solution. I'm trying to say how we find solutions that are practical. Everybody, tries to get people on diets. Okay, we tried. Hopeless. That would be a failure, but we decided we didn't fail. We just came up with this. And it's amazing because, India is the only place in the world you can actually build a bar. Like a bunch of people can actually sit and build a bar. We can do this. There's enough of opportunity there, right? And then you can train, you can do this. This is the antithesis of automation, right? But it's so simple and we're able to do it because we still cook. We don't microwave everything as yet, right? Great. Now, entrepreneurship for me is only about one thing. You create value. If you focus on the money, I was having a really interesting chat with the two young gentlemen who came to pick me up. And I was just explaining that, like Dr. Sudarsun said, most of our life we're spending trying to convince the wrong person. I think you need to convince the customer first before your customer is the VC. Everybody is like trying to sell a business before you even begun it. So I'm just trying to think about it. Okay, so are you in the business of selling an idea or are you in the business of business? So to create a business of business, as these gentlemen, look, we're a little more old school. I'm 45. I must be a little younger than Dr. Ramki. But my point is like, it was a different generation. We didn't have any of this, right? We had to actually build a business. It was called a business. That means you needed to make profit. Nobody was going to come and invest in you while you were loss making. All that did not exist. You needed to actually make it work. It was something that had to work. And then you could live on it. It didn't matter whether a VC came or didn't come. You could eat, you could live, you were happy. When the VC came in, you said, yay, that was a nice bonus. But right now, it looks like we've forgone like one whole bit in between. And we're like, okay, let me get my next $1 million tomorrow without doing absolutely anything because I'm from IIT. But you know what? You're probably right. It works. But the issue is that that's not the way we grew up, right? So that's our reality. Your reality is different. But I was just pointing out that the only thing is value creation. And healthcare, guys, does not stop at your body, medical devices. It's food, it's sustainability. And today, if all of those are related, you get more brownie points. And if they're not related, you get less brownie points. And nature is already giving you all the answers. You don't really have to do anything. So, look at the idea of being an organism, right? Look at the idea of community. Look at the idea of co-creation, collaboration. That's how you get ahead. And be okay to give away ownership for partnerships, not ownership for money. It's a different ethos, I understand. But ownership for money, you don't get skills. You don't get great friends. You don't get a fantastic future. All you get is some money and you're going to be working for that money. So basically you became a slave to yourself, which is fantastic. But you may not end up having the best existence, right? So next one. Excellent. I think I'm done. All right. Thank you so much.
Thanks a lot, sir. I'm sure the students across departments would have been intrigued and inspired. It was exciting to learn about human body. And frankly speaking, everyone must be thinking about their tissue as a data center. So, and health space, finally, like health space is not in isolation, and how different companies working in synergy together is the future. Once again, thanking you, sir. Thanks a lot. Moving on to the third speaker, I would like to invite Dr. N. Ramakrishnan, a master's degree holder in medical management from University of Southern California and American board certified in internal medicine, critical care, and sleep medicine. Dr. Ramakrishnan is currently the Director of Critical Care Services at Apollo Hospitals, Chennai, and is Senior Consultant in Critical Care and Sleep Medicine. He holds countless achievements and first to his credit, which includes the first tele-ICU monitoring center outside of the USA in Chennai, TACT Academy for Clinical Training, Chennai Critical Care Consultants, and being listed in Limca Book of Records for his distinctive body of work. He has been honored by several medical colleges in USA and India for his contribution to the sleep medicine and critical care field. Mr. Ramakrishnan is an equally impactful writer, having 4 books published in Tamil. Now I request upon Sir to come on to the dais and share his thoughts.
Thank you for inviting me. It's going to be a really hard act to follow you both. Now that you've heard from the intelligent healthcare technology entrepreneurs, you're going to probably hear from the boring doctors. So they are the problem solvers. We are the problem creators. So I'm going to tell you what the problems are in healthcare, how we have approached some of them, and there's plenty more that you can address. Certainly something like artificial intelligence is the way forward. And I don't think there's ever going to be a shortage of, people shouldn't feel that they're going to lose their jobs in healthcare or anything. And I think the classic example for that is the FASTag. You have FASTag and you have 2 people in every counter monitoring it. So, I don't understand that at all. So any amount of technology, I think we are still going to have enough people to be working in healthcare or in any sector. So we are fine with that. I have a lot of slides. I don't intend to go through each one of them in detail, but I just want to tell you what we have done and bounce ideas so that you all can interact during the session on what else can be done in the healthcare sector. And for the records, I wanted to be an engineer and became a doctor because my parents couldn't afford to send me to BITS Pilani, so I ended up staying back here and studying in Stanley Medical College. I have been a consultant to industry in developing monitoring solutions, innovative products, and I've worked with some in developing sleep diagnostics. So I just wanted to disclose that. So, done several things. We'll talk about some of them. One is our Chennai Critical Care Consultants Group. You'll wonder what innovation is that, and I'll tell you a little bit more. Nitra TACT Academy for Clinical Training, the tele-ICU, and we also have a trust where we teach people on life-saving skills. Okay. So there's a lot of innovations that can happen in healthcare. There's a lot of clinical challenges that we have, and I'm going to tell you about our group practice, which would, follow some of the themes that the other speakers mentioned. Diagnostics, there's plenty of diagnostics that are essential, early biomarkers. How can we detect illness early? How can we predict that somebody is going to become sick? There's so much to do in that. Monitoring systems, monitors are getting intelligent, whether people are getting or not. So early warning systems that can alert us on, something is going to go wrong with this person. How can I manage the patient? Remote monitoring, which we have some solutions I'll talk about. Lot in the treatment angle from the innovation standpoint on pharmaceuticals, nutraceuticals, equipments that can be created, and not to forget patient care processes, which you were talking about, not only to improve the care process, but also audit research. There's so much that can be done in healthcare on the plenty of data that we have. Next, please. Okay. Doctors, when we train, are taught to be individualistic, unfortunately. And that's where he was talking about, we don't like what we call cookie cutter medicine. Somebody can't tell me what to do. Artificial intelligence can't tell me what to do. I like to do what I think is best for my patient based on what I have learned. And unfortunately or fortunately, each patient is very, very different. The same sleep problem is not going to be treated the same way for you versus you versus you. And that can be something that we individualize. And as I said, the doctors don't like to work as a group. And that's what we started. In 2003, when I came back from US, where group practices are common, we started a group practice in critical care, and the hospitals were not willing for it. Hospitals wanted to employ doctors individually, or the doctors also wanted to work independently, not realizing, particularly in a field like critical care, that it's going to be a huge burnout. You cannot be monitoring sick patients or managing sick patients 24 hours, 365 days a year. It's impractical, impossible, and we need to work together. So the group started with me, and today we are 28 critical care consultants who come together, and we manage all the ICUs of Apollo hospitals, Vijaya Hospital, several other hospitals in the country, in the city. We have worked outside as well in Orissa and Mauritius and stuff, where we have had our group managing patients. So this is a group practice that we started. So the idea was to create a multidisciplinary care group, develop, process improvement programs, quality improvement programs, have larger databases and see how we are doing, how can we do better, implement more standards and protocols. And here we need a lot of technology, which unfortunately, I hate to say this, but even the best of the best hospitals in India today does not have a good electronic medical record system. Or as you said, you really have to scout around at the end of the patient stay on who took care of what was done, was this taken care? And there are several slips that happen. And that's where integrating technology would be of great value. And even in a large hospital system that I work, unfortunately, we do not have a good electronic medical record. So that's a problem where there can be great solutions. Next. We also help in designing ICUs. So that is something that is absolutely important. Think about a situation where somebody is critical, sick, families are coming, the environment doesn't look good, people don't communicate with you. It can make a gloomy situation gloomier. So that is what we try to work with in designing ICU. This is not an ICU we designed, but move on, please. So this is our ICU at Apollo Hospital that we designed, just to give the space, the lighting, everything, so design of hospital spaces. When Dr. Pratap Reddy built Apollo hospitals in 1983, there were no hospital architects, zero. Okay, so today there is more and more information on hospital architecture, how to build intelligent systems, design systems, integrate technology. A lot of those are happening. But this is one such attempt that we made a few years back. Move on, please. So that's how our ICU looks today. This used to be a general ward that had like 20 beds, which we converted. Again, not perfect. I think we made a mistake with all those glasses, the acoustics, when people are, talking to each other, the noise, everything makes a difference. So if that's something that you as engineers are interested in, there's a lot to do out there. That's how it looks cramped. Think about it. In an ICU with so much of technology, okay, patients have a very high chance of having errors in the so many tasks that are done. Like on an average, it is said that every ICU patient has at least 180 tasks performed on them every day. And people have looked at it and said, even if there is, you can't get 6 Sigma, but even if you get reasonably there, there is still a chance of at least 1.2 errors per patient on a daily basis. So what can you all do to help us reduce those errors? Move on, please. Simple things like, we feed a lot of patients using what we call nasogastric tube. You put a tube into the stomach and you feed them. So there's a pump, there's a tube. And what we realized was, every time the nurse was giving a feeding, she had to disconnect and then, push the feeding into the tube or push a medication into the tube. And then we said, this is not on. If somebody can get a drug in the vein where you have a 3-way stopcock where you turn, close it, push what you want, turn over again, why can't it be done for a feeding tube? So we created this. Okay, and this was something that we worked with industry in creating. And I just put some of these things because these are just random thoughts on some random issues we have had and how we have tried to fix it. But it may look like, why didn't anybody think about it? But that's the truth, because there is so much going on and it can happen. One place where there's a huge scope for improving is getting medications and delivering them on time. There's so much data saying that if a patient comes with severe infection, giving them antibiotic within 1 hour saves lives. But think about it. A doctor writes it, the nurse transcribes it or puts it in a computer. That goes to the pharmacy. The pharmacy has to collect it. If somebody has to walk and give it, that's going to take time. And it never happens within 1 hour. I shouldn't say never, but most of the times it doesn't happen within an hour. There are pharmacy robots that are coming, and there are ways of improving the delivery of medications, reducing the chances of errors, and speeding up the entire process. Something to think about. As we started our group practice, the first thing we realized is healthcare in India is significantly doctor-driven. The nurses who spend 24 hours at the bedside will do what they are asked to do, but don't actually participate in the care because, again, as I told you, doctors are taught to be individualistic, taught to be power centers. We are not, but I'm just saying, so the way we talk, the way we interact can be very different. So we realized that the whole concept of a multidisciplinary team has to be built where, everybody's care is important, where nurses, physiotherapists, dietitian, more and more biomedical engineers, pharmacists, everybody is important in the care. And we realized that people are hesitant, not only because of lack of knowledge, but lack of, having difficulty in communication, and more importantly, for lack of a better term, being scared to even voice their opinions. So we decided to start this center called TACT, Academy for Clinical Simulation, in 2007. We were the first simulation-based healthcare training center in the country. And that's what we are listed in Limca Book of World Records for. And what we were trying to do is, it is going to be a small group interactive learning with simulation. Okay. And the idea is you can make any mistakes when it's a simulated environment. You can communicate, you can learn soft skills using the simulation-based center. So our classes never exceed more than 30 to 40 people, often much less than that, 10 to 12 people, where we do the training using the simulation. We have worked with, again, my memory is very bad, but we have worked with a group here trying to develop some CPR mannequins, which are, much more cost effective and giving an effective feedback on how exactly somebody does a CPR to save lives. So there's a lot that can be done in this space in human simulation to provide training for healthcare professionals. And we got an innovation award for innovative teaching techniques in healthcare for this purpose. Again, telemedicine, telecritical care is going a long way. But as was mentioned when I was introduced, we started the first tele-ICU or remote critical care monitoring in 2010. So for the past 12 years, we have been doing this, managing patients in the United States from here. So we manage US ICUs from here, not Indian ICUs. We tried that with the Indian ICU, and I'll show you some pictures of those, but there were some issues and there were some failures that happened. Move on, please. So there's a lot that can be done with technology as far as dissemination of information, you can't know everything. I mean, you do see a rare patient, you do see something and you need some information immediately. There's so much that's available that can be of help. There are ultrasounds that are beginning to come using just your mobile that you could look at images and stuff. Move on, please. So the reason why we wanted to start this tele-ICU, and this happened in the US, was there's a huge shortage of trained intensive care professionals. For those of you who don't know, I just want to mention that critical care is what we call a subspecialty or a super specialty. No longer are they just doctors, MBBS doctors running ICUs, because this is considered a super specialty, very similar to something like cardiology or nephrology or neurology or urology or any of those. So it's so hard to get enough intensivists to cover all these sick patients in the ICU. And in the US, it was kind of beginning to be a movement where it was required to have these trained professionals because of tremendous pressure from the industry, the payers, because there the third-party payment system is very, very significant, where the insurance companies were claiming that if I want to pay for my patients, I need them to get the best care. And if that can be only provided by the intensivist or ICU specialist, we need them. And that's how the telecritical care system started in the US. Moed. Okay. So this is how it looks. This is how the systems are, where we sit in front of, like, I mean, it almost looks like a space center. We have this center in Ananagar where we sit in front of like 12 monitors. We are monitoring almost 120 patients at a time. We can look at, like continuous monitoring of what is happening in their ICUs. We have access to their electronic medical records. So we place the orders directly in their system. It goes directly to the nurse. And if there is an emergency, they can press on what is called the e-alert button, where immediately it rings a bell here for us. We can video in, look at the patient, direct the care. For people who wonder, how can ICU care be provided remotely? Please understand that in any ICU, there's a lot of cognitive decisions that need to be taken, which can be told and somebody can do it. But if there are procedural ones that are required, if I need to put a central line, I have to put a tube to intubate somebody and get them on a ventilator, for that you need an actual person who can do it there. But there is a good 60 to 70% of cognitive functions that can be managed remotely. Things like, oh, the blood test is abnormal. Can you react to it? Somebody's blood pressure is dropping. Maybe I just need to give fluids. So those kind of decisions are what we predominantly make. And then you can save a lot of time and patience on this. So we have the hub and spoke kind of a system. As I said, while I'm working here in Chennai, there is somebody working in Honolulu, somebody working in St. Louis, somebody working in New York, somebody working in Houston, one working out of Israel. So there are about 6 or 7 of us. And you could have probably guessed by now, the reason why India was picked was the time advantage, because we work the day, which is the night time for the US. We don't work night here at all, which is good for us. So we prefer it that way. And we have been covering the night shifts for the US from here. Again, it's not a very scalable model, only because you need to be American board certified. You need to have license in the US to practice. You need to have privileges in each of the hospitals where you're managing patients. So it's a huge process. So about 4 or 5 of us from Chennai have been doing this for the past 12 years. So that's how our systems look. You get dashboards on, what's going on with the patient, what's his most recent blood gas, what is the most recent lab values. And as I said, you can enter directly from here and everything is in the system. Now, this is what annoys me more, because, when I can do this several thousand miles away, unfortunately, I can't do this at my own bedside, where I don't have this kind of technology to put or document everything in the system. Next, please. So this is something we tried for India, and that's what we call IntelliICU. Now, the major problem that we faced was the user and technology, because a lot of them didn't have techniques to, even show us their labs. Sometimes they used to come on video and show us like this, and we have to like zoom in and have a look. It was not easy to do that. And getting the buy-in from the doctors and the nurses at the other end, saying they assume that we were going to replace them. As you said, we don't replace them. We are providing another additional pair of eyes to support the care, to provide increased patient safety. And that was very hard to convince. And so we closed this. We're still doing for the US several thousand miles away, but we are not able to do it for India. And I told you when I started that I wanted to be an engineer, and I became a doctor. And I can tell you about more failures that I've had, but I can tell you, after 40 years of that decision having been made that I became a doctor, today I can tell you that what didn't happen in my life is probably the best thing that happened in my life. So keep that in mind in your entrepreneurial journey, because not everything can be a success. And dealing with success can be great, but dealing with, I don't even want to use the word failure. I just want to say, not dealing with something that did not succeed is something that you need to learn to deal with. Okay. So there's a lot that can be done in reducing medical errors. I told you a few things in scattered way, but move on, please. Next. After all the research, there's one thing that we found works in the ICU, and that's a checklist. Okay, and making sure that if these things are done in daily care, then you can reduce medical errors significantly. So for those of you who haven't read that book, we just created a paper version of that. And after 10 years of repeated efforts, we still haven't been able to get this online. Okay, so that's where the technology is off, please. There's a lot of issues with communicating with the patients because some of our patients are sedated, some of us patients are on a ventilator, they can't communicate. Move on, please. So there's a lot of nonverbal things that we need to rely on, which again can increase errors. A patient may be saying, showing here, I may think he's got chest pain and do something, where in fact, he may have indigestion or something else. So move on. So simple things like easy boards, like there have been options where the patient can point to what exactly they have. So this may again sound like this is really an innovation, but it's something absolutely necessary in an ICU environment. Move on, please. So that's how it looks. Don't leave, don't do it. Easy for them to point out, what do you want? I want pain medications, simple things like that. And again, technology can be used to create something probably even better than this. This is just a paper version. Next, please. Okay. So I'll move from ICU briefly to the sleep, and then we can take questions during the panel discussion. So a lot of people wondered, somebody in critical care, what do you have to do with sleep medicine? Okay, I can tell you that when I was predominantly managing ICU patients in the 90s, I realized that patients in our ICU don't sleep well. Their families don't sleep well because they are worried and anxious. There are a lot of sleep problems that have been missed, and that's why this patient landed in the ICU. Okay. And that's how I developed my interest in sleep medicine and then became American board certified. Move on, please. So in the interest of time, I'm just going to tell you what we do in the sleep lab is we deal with anything to do with sleep. It can be any sleep problem, people who don't sleep, people who sleep too much, and it's very common, like snoring, what we call sleep apnea, where people are not breathing normally and their oxygen level is coming down. And so feel tired and sleepy through the daytime. When I was sitting here, I saw a couple of people sleeping and I was like, did he not sleep or does he have sleep apnea? Okay, so that's what goes on in our mind. So daytime sleepiness is a common problem that needs to be fixed. We see people who have shift work problems, circadian rhythm disturbances, what we call, our body is tuned to sleeping in the night and working in the daytime. But unfortunately, today we work for the UK, the US, and all other times where we are working at odd times and trying to sleep at odd times. And for some people can adapt to it, some people cannot. So those are kind of problems we see. Then we see sleepwalking, sleep talking, sleep eating, any of those. So anything to do with sleep and only problems relating to sleep. Although my background is general medicine and critical care, at Nitra, we only see sleep-related problems. For those who need it, we do this study called polysomnogram, where we look at their sleep pattern. We look at their EEG, their hand movement, hand movements, how they breathe, what's their oxygen level, what's their heart rate. All those are monitored in the polysomnogram. But as you can see, it's a cumbersome process. So, and they're sleeping in an environment that's different from their usual. So there is a lot of, next please, there's a lot of things that are evolving to see how can we avoid this kind of a polysomnogram and do other tests. Move on, please. So there's something called a portable sleep study, but that's limited, where if I have a patient whom I think has sleep apnea, as I was telling you, those who are snoring and those who are feeling tired or sleepy during the daytime, where I'm suspecting that their breathing is not normal, their oxygen level is not normal, we can do this portable sleep study, which is almost like a cell phone hanging around your neck. It's connected wherever you are, at your home, in a hotel, in another hospital, wherever it is. And it can record the breathing and oxygen level and heart rate only. It does not have an EEG. So a patient who wears this and does not sleep at all, and trust me, there are people who do that because if it involves their job, for example, a pilot wants to prove that he doesn't have sleep apnea, he can wear this and not sleep, and there will be no sleep apnea because this apnea happens only during sleep. So we have to pick on which patients can go through the study, and then we appropriately plan it. But there are more and more, next please, more and more wearable sleep diagnostics that are coming. And this is where I think you all have a tremendous potential. Right now, the Apple Watches, Fitbits, so many of those can monitor sleep, where, the duration of the sleep can be reasonably comparable with a polysomnogram, but the quality of sleep is not. Okay, there you look at heart rate variability, breathing variability. There are so many things that can be seen. But as of today, the technology for assessing quality of sleep is not good. And when I say this, I do want to anecdotally mention a patient who came to me a few months back saying that I came here because I'm not getting good quality sleep. I'm like, right, but what is your symptom? I don't have any symptoms, but my watch is telling me I'm not getting good quality sleep. So if people start relying so much on this technology and believe something that is not true, that's going to be a problem. So here you are, guys, improve the technology, and that would be great. Okay. Also about the treatment options, particularly for sleep apnea, we use something called CPAP, or positive airway pressure. Okay. Yeah, for lack of better term, and I shouldn't preach to the choir, you're all engineers, but it's literally a reverse vacuum cleaner. You just blow pressure and it's opening up your air passage. But we don't have a good CPAP machine in India. All the CPAP machines we are using are imported as of today. There is one coming, and again, I can't mention the name, but one of the companies is coming up locally, and hopefully more such would come, where you can build better technology and have our treatment options here. Those should also become smaller. There are some newer CPAPs that are coming, but just fit into the nose rather than having to have a mask, all of those. So this space is also open for more work. Yeah. All right. Just as I mentioned about telecritical care, we also do telehealth and sleep medicine, which lends itself beautifully, because in sleep medicine, there's not much of physical examination. So we talk to the patient, we talk to them. Move on, please. So we did this telehealth. You can guess when. Next, please. You can guess when? During the lockdown. Okay. So many people had sleep problems during the lockdown, primarily because of change in their lifestyle, sitting at home and working, not getting enough sunlight, fear of COVID, fear and uncertainty of the future. So many things. And in fact, we published this as lockdown sleep syndrome, and it is published in one of the medical journals. And thankfully, right at that time, the Indian government brought these telemedicine guidelines in India, where we were allowed to do this through the phone. Until then, a state like Karnataka was banning, it was illegal to do telemedicine in Karnataka. Whereas now, they have approved and it is open. And interestingly, the number of patients I saw in telemedicine was so high during the lockdown. And today, everybody says, no, we'll come back. We don't like to see you remotely. So that is one thing I don't understand. It's just a feeling that I would rather see you in person than having to. I mean, people from out of the state or those out of the country still use the telemedicine platform, but the ones in Chennai obviously prefer to come and see us. Move on, please. All right. So these were the teleconsultations we were doing, and move on. I think we can almost done. Yeah. So I know it was a hodgepodge, but it was intentionally hodgepodge. So just to describe that it is limitless. I mean, the opportunities are limitless in healthcare, technology, and more. So I'm happy to take more questions during the panel. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for all the information. It was a privilege to learn about the solutions that have created impact in our society. Sir covered a spectrum of domains from critical care to sleep-related problems. I'd like to thank sir for enlightening the students with current existing problems in the health space. Now, we'd like to start with the Q&A session. We have got a few questions from the Google form, but before that, I'd like the audience to go ahead with the questions. So we have one of the best brains in India. So I'll say, here is your chance. Anybody has mic? Go ahead.
the very idea of convincing itself is not right. See, it should be seamless. See, for a patient, they will not prefer to go to an AI agent to ask for help. No, they will not. You cannot change the behavior of the customer. So without changing the behavior of the customer, can you put your technology in a seamless way? That is what you are supposed to do. So never try to change the behavior of the customer. They will not change. So one example is telemedicine. Telemedicine became very successful because people did not have a choice. If my consultant is far away, thought I was sufficiently loud.
Okay. I mean, it'll give the doctor how the patient has been treated before. I mean, uh, my question is that how is I'm very sorry to ask. Will you willing to start help our startup? Are you willing to help our startup, or is there any difficulties in dealing with it? Yeah. Okay. I mean, that's yeah, that's why I have used this.
Yeah, I
Eh.
mean, to answer your question, as you already mentioned, there are mentors, and so somebody with an interest in what you're doing would be able to mentor.
See, there are multiple levels of assistance that you will need if you want to start a business, right? See, number one, you need entrepreneurship mentorship. Right? I mean, how do you even conceive an idea and take it forward? Someone who are seasoned entrepreneurs, they can help you there. You need help with finances, right? You need help to run the show. You need some money in the pot so that you can spend on research, development, and market research, whatever, right? You need money help. And you need technology. I mean, what is the right technology to solve this problem? What are the alternates? I mean, what are the pros and cons of technology A versus technology B? So you have to be clear about, what type of help you want. And you may find appropriate people willing to come down and help you. It's a matter of communication, man. I mean, you have to just network. Right? Start talking to people and go and shamelessly stand near them. No problem. There's nothing wrong in that. Right? And if you stand near somebody, then they are going to ask you, may I help you? That's how you start a conversation. I'm not saying this is the best way to start a conversation, but that is also a way to start a conversation. Right? So you have to open up. I mean, put your inhibitions outside, put your fear outside, go open up and start speaking. And you may get some people bouncing back on you. Don't bother. You have to be aiming at your focus. I mean, I want to start this company, or I want to pursue my idea. Whatever happens, I don't care. I only focus on my goal. The path can be nasty. It doesn't matter, right? So as long as you reach out to the right people, or you reach out to more people, at least some of them will definitely come on. It's only the passion that you express that counts. If you are passionate, I am motivated to talk to you. I'm sure all these gentlemen will be very motivated to talk to you when you showcase your passion. That would be my answer.
I have done the research of dating with adolescents before.
I have heard that some patients have been mistreated with, due to the lack of what I have done before. Patients who have been treated now have been somewhat caused side effects have been done due to the other paper operations. So that's why I thought of creating this patient diary so that they can get an access to the patient what they have done. It may reduce some of the side effects. What I thought.
Good idea. I think we work on it, as you said, like connect with the right people and do the right.
So we'd like to move on to the next question. Yeah, go ahead.
Out of this session, I saw a lot of innovation that is happening in the healthcare sector in India. I'm curious to know that till now I have seen this applying to the private healthcare system. So is there any currently activity going on for the public healthcare system also? Because I feel the public healthcare system is stretched beyond its point in India and it badly needs some or any intervention which is possible. So is there any significant activity going on there also?
Yes, there's a lot of things happening behind the scenes, and I think it's only a matter of time we start see, as I want we start seeing it. There's a lot of activity going on.
And one more question I have. I saw that in that one presentation we have that robots they are delivering medicine to the patient on time and the correct medicine so that there is no human error in it. So that I guess would be a great need for the nursing community because that is a traditionally a role for them. So if the robots take care of that, then how can that community offer some new values to the patient over and above that?
Pharmacy robots do not deliver it directly to the patient. It brings it to the nursing station and the nurse has to check and give it. Okay, even today. Maybe in the long run, what you're saying might happen, but particularly inside a hospital, a lot of it is given through the veins. Those cannot be done by a robot, at least today. So it can happen. Who knows? There is still a human interface to it. It just speeds up the time of, the moment you order something, it just comes to you quicker. That's all.
So yeah, moving on to the next question. Go ahead, Sneh.
About this, the meeting start. There are some, in fact, I am consulting for some, mattress companies. I'll leave it there. They do want to create smart beds. They want to see how the quality can improve. They want to build in some, non-wearable technology inside the bed. Some of them want to have temperature control of the rooms to, help you sleep better. But the big question here is, beds are often, there is co-sleeping. There are two people who are going to sleep. And the requirement may be completely different. My wife hates AC. She keeps turning it off. I keep turning it on. So, that's how it works. So I don't know how much it's going to help for long term, but for a diagnostic, maybe it would help, because the big, criticism of a polysomnogram is doing it in an environment that's different, putting so many wires. Is that natural sleep? Okay. So from a diagnostic standpoint, maybe some of these non-wearables would help because that one night, maybe the person could sleep alone and you could get the data. I don't know. I'm probably not still thinking right, but non-wearable technologies will have a role, but I still not 100% convinced.
Actually, you should check this company called ChiliPad. What they do is you have beds that can control temperature. So when you say non-wearable, there are things that you can actually do, like doctor was saying. So what they do is your temperature control actually affects your sleep. So it's amazing marketing. But what they managed to do is split the bed so that your wife and you or whoever you're sleeping with has a different variation in temperature according to what they like. And even that is engineering, isn't it? And what happens is like you can put it up to whatever temperature you want. And, in the morning, your body temperature increases. So automatically the bed at the time as an alarm would increase the body temperature in the morning. We don't have anything like that here. It sells for around 2 to 3 lakhs in the States. But I think there's a huge scope because there are so many people looking at sleep health. And even something simple like that is more energy efficient than an AC anyway, because it's already contained. So yeah, I mean, there are things in terms of that. So if you'd like to look into that, that's something maybe that you could look at. Okay.
So one digression that I can think of is, see, these signals are electrical predominant, right? Or these are electrical. What if you use optics? Can you do visual? Can you do something visual? See, there is video analytics based, solutions for how people sleep. People have looked into that. It's not very accurate. The EKG or EEG is very accurate profile duration, but visually, can you do something? Can you get to at least 70% of the solution, right? So beyond visual inspection, can you look at the temperature profile? Can you use IR imaging? Can you use other ways of getting data? See, when you say non-intrusive, something that should not disturb me when the data is picked from me, either I should have something which is embedded inside me, so start transmitting data, which is worse, right? Or we can do something which is extraneous. I mean, you observe using a different pair of eyes, not the regular visible light eyes. Use additional optical information and see something can be worked out, right? So we have to look at the problem from different angles and see if data can be captured from different angles to do this less intrusively. So those are opportunities.
Yeah, not a sleep study, but there are some for looking at daytime sleepiness, looking at the pupils. Like when you're driving, if you're feeling sleepy, there are some that can be with the rear view mirror that can actually look at you, and if your pupils are beginning to constrict, that you're going to begin to sleep and it can alarm. So there are some coming in that sector, not the diagnostic, but yes, this is also diagnostic in a way on daytime sleepiness. So yeah, there are options.
So
2 questions. You mentioned of collaborating with the team. So I have a doubt, like we should select a team of friends or make professionals recruit and make them friends. Which is better according to you?
Both are good. See, if you have friends who are smart, great, you are lucky. Or if you can make friends with smart people, again you are lucky. Both are good.
My friends are toxic, and what should I?
No, no problem.
That you brought this out.
No, that was an example.
See, the first thing is you need to have everything to detect that something is not right. Detection is this level 1 strategy, avoidance is level 2 strategy, or you can convince that person to be less toxic, whatever. See, in my opinion, anything and everything can be solved by a dialogue. If it is your friend, you can talk to them. They are what they are because of something. I mean, as he said, everything has a causal meaning. If something is happening because of something which has happened previously, somewhere, right? So you just look at it from the organism point of view or the superorganism point of view.
I can tell you from our own group practice example that I knew none of them. So none of them were my friends. Now they are not when we started. We need to have similar kind of ideology, similar kind of wavelengths to work together, build a group. Our attrition rate is less than 10%. It is great for a doctor.
we would have loved to hear more from the speaker, but in the constraint of time, we will be limiting the questions. Now I would like to call upon Dr. Richa Agarwal, our faculty advisor for Nirman at IIT Madras, for note of thanks.
Thank you, Anirudh. And thank you all, first of all, for coming here. And the success of any event that we organize is basically on the audience. If you get the value, and then our event is successful. But before I just simply say a vote of thanks and close the ceremony, let me really just summarize a few things that I take away from this session. And I think each of the three speakers had brilliant points to put across. If we look at the thoughts that were shared, the very first thing is your entrepreneurial journey will have certain struggles. It requires a lot of effort. It requires diverse set of skills. So it's always good to have a team together. And I think that was a point which was kind of resonated across all three speakers, by all of them. So when we look at doctor here, he's talking about a group medication approach. When we look at Dr. Sudarsun, he's talking about identifying people who can support you and supplement your skills. And then when we look at Shiva, he's talking about, the kind of community you can create. And I think that is the place where we need to be in future. Personally, I work in community space in, studying consumer communities and how communities are a tool for solving a lot of problems, realizing your passions, and just living a better life. And I think if you can marry the two, your work and your community space, I think you'll never have to really work. You'll enjoy every bit of it. And I think that came across also when you hear Dr. Ramki is talking about, he has a group and his group is supporting him. If you hear Mr. Shiva, he's talking about the family being there. When you hear Dr. Sudarsun, he's talking about a team which he has built. Okay. So that's one big thing I think you need to think about. How do I start building a community, a team, or a group that I can rely on? The second part, I think, is a huge focus on the space where the problem exists, the ecosystem. And I'm saying a space and an ecosystem because very often our students and our entrepreneurs, because I've interacted with so many of you, I know you start off with your technology, which is a good thing. It's a good place to start with. But very often you're very focused on my technology, what I can do, and you're very disconnected with the final user, the consumer, or the patient. And that becomes a limitation because you are then not able to understand or empathize with the person and their situation. And you go on trying to sell your technology, which becomes, it's an obstacle in your way. So try to empathize, try to move out of your space, understand what the problem is and how your technology can be helpful in solving that. Okay. Finally, I think I'd like to, take up what Dr. Ramki again mentioned here is about the space where the patients live, where the families are visiting. The space has a huge impact. Today we are in this room. It has good acoustics. The way it is, being created and crafted, it allows a good interaction between the speakers and the audience. Likewise, in a hospital, my experiences of hospital have been limited, but whatever they have been something which, I don't want to repeat because I always found them very, very confusing spaces. Finding where a certain ward is, where a doctor is, and always in India, it's such a crowded space. So personally, I feel even that can be improved. It's not just medicines. It's all the things that you can change in the experience of the patient and the family that is there. I think that would be a huge, huge contribution to healthcare. So with that, let me thank the panel here, panel of experts. All three of you shared your experiences, brought a very different perspective. And I think that would really help, all the budding entrepreneurs who are there in the audience today. Thank you all for joining us. And let me thank, first of all, the team Nirman, without whom this event would just not have been possible. And behind this team, the Nirman program manager, Nandini. Okay, so program team members, I, of course, have interacted with few of them. Some of them are here. So we have Venkat, we have Varun, we have Tanmoy, and we have Anirudh. These have been leading from the front. And I'm very proud to call out their names here because we were in a very bad situation a few days back. So what you see today is just the last few days' work. But if students put together their mind to something, I know they can achieve anything. whether it's your entrepreneurship, whether it's an event, whether it's your studies, I think you can do it. So please believe in yourself and keep working. And thank you all for joining us here. A big round of applause for our, guests. Let me also, ask my student volunteers, Varun, Venkat, and Tanmoy, to hand over a bag of goodies to our experts here. It's nothing much, just a token of our appreciation, something to carry away with you and to remember us. Nandini, can you please come up and join us on the stage? So Nandini is our program manager, Nirman, and she is responsible for a lot of things that get done. Anirudh, please. Okay, so thank you all, and thank you team, thank you experts, thank you for making it a success. We'll do a photograph, but let everybody know.